With pranams to all my Guru. We shall continue where we left yesterday. We had discussed about, we were discussing about the types of Jwara. In that we had finished the Ushna Jwara and Shita Jwara and the importance of Vayu here. Moving on, we have the next type of Jwara, the Antarvegi Jwara and Bahirvegi Jwara. Antardaho Adikaha Trishna Pralapaha Shwasanam Brahmaha Sandhi Astishulam Asvedo. The important clinical feature in Antarvegi Jwara is there is no Sveda Pravartana, Dosha Varcha Vinigraha. Antarvegasya lingani Jwarasyetani lakshayet. Santapo abhi adhiko bahyaha. In Antarvegi Jwara, adhika, bahya santapa is not so proper and it is asvedi. Whereas in Bahirvegi Jwara, adhika santapo bahyaha. The santapa, the tapa may be easily felt externally, wherein the other lakshana of Antarvegi Jwara, Trishnadinam cha Mardavam, are not so prominently found here. Bahirvegasya lingani sukhasadhyatvam evacha. It is sukhasadhya. Moving on, the next type which comes here is the Prakrita Jwara. Prakritaha sukhasadhyastu vasanta sharat udbhavaha. Why? What is the meaning of the word Prakrita? Kala swabhavat prakupita doshaha prakritaha. It is there in the second line of the Tika in the next page. Kala swabhava prakupito doshaha prakritihi. That dosha prakopa which happens due to Kala swabhava, which in turn results in Jwara, is what is supposed to be called as Prakrita Jwara. But always remember, even Vata, which happens in Varsha, is not called as, even though it is supposed to be called as Prakrita, it is not called so, and it is not Sukhasadhya. Prakritaha Sukhasadhyaha. Prakrita Jwara are supposed to be Sukhasadhya, and it is Sukhasadhya, it is Prakrita only when it happens in Vasanta Rutu and Sharad Rutu in terms of particular dosha. Ushnam Ushnena Samvruddham Pittam Sharati Kupyati. We know the explanation of Sanchaya Prakopa of each dosha. Sanchitaha Shite Kafaschaivam Vasante Samudiriyate. Why these things happen? Pittam Sharadi Kupyati, Ushnam Ushne Samvruddham. Why this happens is the next 3-4 shloka is what we have the explanation for that. Varshasu Amla Vipakabhihi Adbhihi Oshadibhistata. In Varsha Rutu, what is dominant? What is the resultant of the Ahara? What is the resultant of the Aushadha? They all majorly become Amla Vipaki. Sanchitam, Pittam, Udriktam. Because of these things, there happens Sanchaya of Pitta, which becomes further Udrikta, Prakupita, due to Aditya Tejasa in Sharadrutu. Jwaram Sanjanayati Ashu. This is one important term here. Can come down in the Tika, the word Ashu. Ashu iti Ashviti. Pittasya Ashukaritvat Shighram Janayati. So what happens here in Sharadrutu due to Pitta Prakopa? The Jwara which happens will be Ashu. It happens quite fast. Tasya cha Anubalaha Kafaha, which is the Anubandhya dosha, which is the primary dosha here in Sharadrutu, is Pitta. What is the Anubala dosha? What is the Anubandhi dosha? What is the Anubandha dosha? It is Kapha. Please remember this. Prakrityaiva visargasya tatra na anashanat bhayam. This is Prakrita Jwara, and it is happening in Visarga Kala. Visarga Kala, it is Saumya Guna Pradhana. Usually the person Bala will be on a higher side. Here, Anashana helps. One should not step back to give Anashana because there is no contraindication for Anashana to be given here. You can also see through the Tika, which is explained right next to onto the right of this part. Saumyaha snigdhaha tatra balavantascha purushaha. We all know Visarga Kala, Adana Kala, Balavan Purusha, less Bala Purusha. Tena tatra utpanno jwara amashaya samutpannatvena. Even the jwara which happens is predominantly happening from the amashaya. The utpatti sthana of the jwara is amashaya and it is langhana arha. Person can be given langhana. Then comes langhana hetu because kapha pitta rupa. Kapha is anubandhi dosha and pitta is the pradhana dosha. Why it is langhana arha? Why it is langhana possible? Kapha pitte drave dhatu sahete langhanam. How beautifully it is explained why you have to give langana. There are so many points why langana can be given in this particular condition. How beautifully it has been explained. That's why I said in the last class also that Chakrapani sir makes it more easy to understand. Even though it is easier, but it becomes more easy for us to understand. Similarly, the next comes the kapha. Adbihi oshadibhischa madhurabhihi chitaha kafaha. Where it happens? It happens in Hemanta. Hemante. Why it becomes prakupita? Surya santaptaha sa vasante prakupyati. We know the explanation for all these. Vasante shleshmana tasmat jwaraha samupajayate. So Vasanta Rutu, during Vasanta Rutu, Shleshma Jwara happens. Remember what Kala it is? It is Adana Kala. Tasyapi Vatapittam Bhaved Anu. Anu here is Anubandhi. Anubandhi, the secondary dosha, which is the Pradhana dosha, which is the Anubandhya dosha. In this is the Kapha, which is the Anubandha dosha or Anubandhi dosha. It is Vata and Pitta. In the Tika and in the coming shloka, we also get the explanation Adavantecha Madhyecha Buddhva Dosha Balabalam and all that. So what we have to understand here is the state of dosha in relation to different rutu. What is the bala of Vata and Pitta in Vasanta? In the early stages of Vasanta, it will be Durbala. In the middle stages, it will be Madhyama. And by the end of Vasanta, the bala of Vata Pitta becomes more Prabala, more Balavan. The same thing happens in terms of the bala of Kapha in Sharat Rutu. What happens to Vata Pitta, the bala of Vata Pitta in Vasanta Rutu is very similar to the bala of Kapha in Sharat Rutu. I mean to say, it will be Durbala in the early stages of Sharad Rutu. It will be medium. It will be moderate in Madhya Bhaga of Sharad Rutu. Whereas in the end stages of Sharad Rutu, the Kapha Bala becomes more Balavan, more Prabala. Moving on, this all is explanation about the Prakrita Jwara. Remember, Prakrita Jwara, if you have to term it as Prakrita Jwara, it has to be Sukha Sadhya. Vikrita Jwara, it is always Kashta Sadhya. Remember, Vataja Jwara, even in Varsha Rutu, is not Sukha Sadhya. It is Kashta Sadhya. There are few exceptions for the rules which is made. One exception for that is this explanation. Moving on, Kala Prakriti Muddishya Nirdishtaha Prakrito Jwaraha. That is what is the explanation I just gave. It continues here. Kala Prakriti Muddishya, that which is in relation to the Kala, the Rutu, is what is termed as the Prakrita Jwara. Prayena Anilajo Dukkhaha. So what do you consider, even though it is as Prakrita Jwara, but it is Dukkha, it is Kashta Sadhya. Why it is Kashta Sadhya? The explanation comes in the forthcoming Tika. Generally, even though it is happening in its own Rutu or in any Rutu, it is always Kashta Sadhya, Vataja Jwara. Remember this. Or, which is the other one which is Kashta Sadhya? Kaleshu Anyeshu Vaikritaha. We all understood in the previous explanation that the Prakrata Jwara, I mean the particular Dosha Jwara happening in particular Rutu is Sukha Sadhya. But what is this shloka says? I'm sorry. What does this say? Kaleshu Anyeshu Vaikrataha. If it is not happening in the supposed Rutu, if it is happening in other Rutu, then it is to be considered, which we commonly call as the off-season Jwara, is commonly Vaikrata. So what is the reason for this? It is what is being explained in the Nidanasthana. Why, as I said in the last point, Prayena Anilajo Dukkhaha. Why it is so? It is because it is not Sukha Sadhya. You can see in the Thika, Prakrutatve api yaha Sukha Sadhyaha sa eva Prakrata Uchyata iti bhavaha. Even though it is happening in its own Rutu, but it is not Sukha Sadhya. That is why it is called as, it is not to be usually called so. Evam tavat sarvo vatajo vaikrataha. Because of this reason, Vataja Jwara is considered as Vaikrita Jwara. Moving on, see how beautiful these texts are. It is not only the opinion of the teacher which is being explained here, it is even the opinion of others which is being explained here. Anyetu bruvate varshakale vatajo api prakritaha kimtu ayam krichraha vasanta sharadudbhavastu prakritaha sukhasadhyo bhavati iti vishesha. Let it be Sukhasadhya or Kashtasadhya. Let us call it as Prakrita. This is what is the explanation of other Acharya here. So to consider something as a Sukhasadhya Jwara, what is the criteria? There comes the next point. Balavat Swalpadosheshu Jwaraha Sadhyo Anupadravaha. So what do you consider a Jwara, or when do you consider a Jwara as Sukha Sadhya? Is when Jwara Upadrava, is when it is happening in a Balavan Purusha. When the Purusha in whom the Jwara is getting affected is Balavan. There is Swalpa Dosha. There is Swalpa Dosha Vikriti. And it is Upadrava Rahita. Anupadravaha is Upadrava Rahita. So what is the criteria for a Jwara to be called as Sukha Sadhya? Is these three. Then comes the question, is there any explanation of Upadrava for Jwara? It is not explained in this. Whereas Tantrantare, you can go to the last point in the Thika, which says Tantrantare cha. In other Tantra, in other texts, it is being explained as Hikashvasa, Kasa Drushna, Chardi Atisara, and all Jwaram Upadravanti. Dashopadrava Jwaram Upadravanti. These are the 10 Upadrava which are explained for Jwara. Here we also get one more explanation, a cross reference of the Chikitsasthana 21st chapter. The definition of Upadrava. Upadravastu kalu Roga Uttarakalajo Rogashrayo Roga Eva. And all that. Moving on, then comes the point where we explained in the previous shloka that Balavat Svalpadeshesho Balavat Salpa Dosheshu, Jwaraha Sukhasadhyo Anupadravaha. So that which is having all these three qualities, it is supposed to be called as Sadhya Jwara, Sukhasadhya Jwara. So then comes the question, which is Asadhya Jwara. There comes again criteria for Asadhya Jwara. Hetubir Bahubhihi Jato. Hetubhihi Bahubhihi Jato. Balibhihi Bahulakshanaha. ज्वरः प्राणान्तकृत् यश्च शीघ्रम् इन्द्रियनाशनः. So what are the criteria for a jwara to be called as asadhya or pranantaka is when you have, in the case is having bahu hetu bihi bahu. There are many number of hetu. So what to consider hetu here is, we understood in the previous, in yesterday's point of view, in the previous shloka, that hetu can be considered as the dosha here. We understood the terminologies used by Acharya Charaka or Chakrapani in terms of Sannikrishta, Viprakrishta, that is the Pratyasanna and Vyavahita. So based on that, we can consider here this Bahu Hetu as the Hetu proper, the Nidana of the disease proper, as well as Bahu Dosha Yukta Avastha. What are the other criteria? Balibhihi. Balavan Purusha is Sukha Sadhya, whereas Balavan Vyadhi or Balavan Jwara is an Asadhya Lakshana. Remember, when there is Bahu Hetu, there has to be Bahu Lakshana. You can see in the first line of the Tika, it says that Nanu Balibhihi Bahubhishcha Hetubihi Jato Bahulakshana Eva Bhavishyati. Then the thing says it is not always true. But when it says it is not always true, it is at times true. So you can consider Bahulakshana Yukta Jwara as an Asadhya Jwara Lakshana. I'll explain you why it is said so. Nanu. Why it is said as not true always, or it is not like this always. And which is the other quality for a Jwara to be called as Asadhya or Maraka? It is Sigra Indriya Nashaka. So there comes the question, even though there are multiple Nidana, there is no rule that there has to be Bahulakshana Yuktata. Why? Because Purushasya Agnibaladi Visheshena Dosha Hetavo Yatha Ukta Dosha Guna Api Na Bahulakshanam Rogam Kurvanti. If the person's Agnibala is good, this rule of Bahu Hetu, Bahu Hetu leading to Bahulakshana does not happen. Why? Because Samprapti Vishesha Abhavat Cha Na Bahulakshanatvam Bhavati. Because the Samprapti does not happen so it does not end up in Bahulakshana. Then comes the question, then comes a very good explanation of ekam dvau trin bahun va api dehe dhattvadi yogatah darshayanti vikaramstu kupitaha pavanadayaha. It can be the three dosha together or in alone or in combination of two can inflict the dushya, the seven, by different combination. Then happens darshayanti vikaramstu. Different diseases happen because of this. Here comes the explanation of saptaha dvadashaha dvadashaha tathaiva cha sa pralapa brahmashvasa tikshno hanyat jwaro naram. So when will the person die with all these above said qualities? Is what is that above said qualities? The Jwara, which is Tikshna, the Jwara which is Tikshna and associated with Pralapa, Brahma and Shwasa is what is supposed to be, or it is the one which kills the patient, Hanyat Jwaro, on 7th or 10th or 12th day. It is explained as Saptahat Va. It is not saying it happens only on Saptaha. Va Shabdascha Vikalparthaha. It can, or it can be a different day also. It is not that it happens only on 7th. It can be of 7th, or it can be of 10th, or it can be 12th. There comes the question, what is this 7, 10 and 12? Saptahad Vatottaraha Sa Pralapa Brahmashwasa Tikshno Hanti Evam Guna Eva Paitiko Dashahat. So if it is Vataja Jwara, then 7th day is the important day. Pittaja Jwara, 10th day. Kafaja Jwara is the 12th day. Why this happens? The Thika continues. Shigratama, Shigratara, Shigra Vikara Karitvat. So how does Vata Pitta Kapha cause Vikara? Is based on the degree of comparison. Shigratama is Vata, Shigratara is Pitta, Shigra is Kapha. Moving on. Anyetu Saptahatsa Pralapaha. There is also explanation that there is also the explanation in the previous line saying that it can happen even before or after the 7th day, 10th day, or 12th day also. That is what is the Va explanation also holds good for. Anyetu, others opine that Saptahat, it will kill the patient when the Tikshna Jwara is associated with Pralapa. Dashaha on 10th day with Brahma, on 12th day with Shwasa. Others' opinions are also given equal importance here. Moving on to the next one, the Asadhya Jwara. Asadhya Jwara, Jwara Kshinasya Jwara, which happens in a Kshina person. Jwara happens, or Jwara associated with Shuna, Shotha. Shuna is Shotha. Gambhira. Gambhira has got two meanings here. Gambhira, it can be Antarvegi Jwara. Gambhira, it can be Gambhira Dhatustha. That means it is associated, it is attached to Gambhira Dhatu. Dairgharatrikaha. Dairgharatrikaha. Here the Ratri word does not mean only the night, it means the whole day and night. Dirgha Kala Anubandhi. You can see in the Tika. Kimva Dirgha Ratrim. Next comes the question. Next comes the point. Kesha Simantakrit Jwaraha. Asadhyo Balavan. It is Balavan, and if it is Kesha Simantakrit, there happens hair fall which makes the scalp visible in a straight line. Because the hair fall has happened in a straight line, the scalp will be visible through that line. That is what is Kesha Simantakrit. In this, the previous 3-4 shloka, we come across the Jwara which is Asadhya, the Jwara which is Sukhasadhya, the Jwara which is Pranantaka, and also the Jwara which is Asadhya. Moving on comes the next explanation of a very important point, especially for the exam point of view, which is, we commonly call it as Vishama Jwara, which is also till now, which is explained as Panchavidha Jwara. Srotobhihi Visrita Dosha Guravo Rasavahibhihi Gurava iti Vruddhaha. Gurava, you can see in the Tika, first line, it is Gurava iti Vruddha. Srotobhihi Visrita Dosha Vruddho Rasavahibhihi Sarvadehanugaha Stabdha Jwaram Kurvanti Santatam. So what is this Stabdha? Stabdha is what is the Jwara, I mean what is the dosha which is not ready for elimination. Srotobhihi, which is Sarvadehanuga, which is spread all over the body and this becomes stambhita. It is not easily eliminated. It cannot be easily eliminated. That Jwara is what is called as santata Jwara. Dashaham dvadashaham va saptaham va sudussaha sashikram shighrakarittvat prashamam yanti hanti va. See, the explanation is given, how important the explanation is given here. Even before the other things are explained, it says Prashamam Yanti Hantiva on 10th day, 12th day, or 7th day. See, this is what is the significance of the consequences of Jwara. It manifests quickly. What matters here in its manifestation is the Kala, Dushya, Prakriti, and Dosha, Tulyata. There is similarity in Kala, Dushya, Prakriti, and Dosha. Yesterday also, in the previous part of shloka number, we also came across these Kala, Dushya, Prakriti, Dosha, Tulyo, Hi, Santatam. We had it in the previous page, the Tika for the shloka from 32 to 35. There was explanation of this Kala, Dushya, Prakriti, Dosha, Tulyo, Hi, Santatam. What is important here? It is Nishpratyanika. It is not easily treatable. Tasmad Neyaha Sudussaha. It is very difficult. What happens in Santata Jwara? Please remember this. Kala, Dosha, Prakriti, and Dosha. All these are helping each other. They are Tulya. They are Samana. Yatha Dhatums Tatha Mutram Purisham Cha Aniladayah. So what are these points? Dhatu, Mutra Purisha, and Anila. These are the ashraya for the Santata Jwara. So how many ashraya are there for Santata Jwara? There are Dhatu, there are 7 Dhatu, Sapta Dhatu, 3 Dosha, and 2 Mala. Mutra and Purisha are considered all these 7 plus 3 plus 2. The 12 are the ashraya. Yugapatcha anupadyante. All these things happen simultaneously. I mean, it happens quite quickly. Yugapat niyamat santate jwara. This happens as a rule. These 12, involvement of these 12 happens yugapat as a rule. Sashuddhya va apyashuddhya va rasadinam asheshatah saptahadishu kaleshu prashamamyati hantiva. What causes this cure or death on 7th day, 10th day, or 12th day is the Shuddhi or Ashuddhi states of Rasadi Dhatu. If the Rasadi Dhatu become completely, devoid of these dosha, which is said as Asheshataha, then what can we call this? Is as the Doshapaka. When Doshapaka happens, we all know the concept of Doshapaka and Dhatupaka, right? So when Doshapaka happens, the Vyadhi becomes more laghu for chikitsa. Whereas yada tunati shuddhyanti na va shuddhyanti sarvashah, there happens difficulty. If not, what happens? There comes the concept of dhatupaka. If not, then dhatupaka occurs, which ends in the other way. Dvadasha ete dvadasha ite samuddishtaha. I said you a few minutes ago that there are 12 ashraya. Dvadasha, these are the 12 ashraya. Santatasya ashraya tadha visargam dvadashe kritva divase avyakta lakshanam. This is what is the explanation of what happens if this continues. Visargam dvadashe. What happens when there is dhatupaka, I mean doshapaka? It happens visarga the Jwara becomes Visarga. The Jwara leaves. I mean, the Jwara gets cured of. But it can stay in the body as avyakta lakshanam. This can stay in the body as avyakta. Durlabho upashamaha kalam dirghamapyanuvartate iti vruddhva jwaram vaidya upakrametu santatam. Considering all these, what is important? Visargam dvadashe kritva divase avyakta lakshanam. It becomes avyakta and it will wait for the kala for a very long time. It can wait for a long time until the proper kala arrives. It again comes back. This is why santata is very difficult. One has to keep this in mind and treat santata jwara. So there comes the question, what is the involvement of dosha in sannipata? I mean the dosha in these Vishama Jwara or these types of Jwara. Remember, it is always the Tridosha which is involved here. यथाक्रमं पित्तकफानि अनिलोत्तर सन्निपात आरब्धत्वात् सन्ततज्वरस्य ज्ञेयः. It is always in Santata Jwara there is involvement of all the three dosha. In the coming up shlokas, you also will know about the significance of samasannipata or one dosha being predominant in comparison to other dosha and all that. Moving on, how this happens you can see in the coming up lines of Thika. Dhatu malapakat. These are the two important factors which causes hanana and which causes vimunchana of jwara. Dhatupaka causes hanana, whereas malapaka causes vimunchana of jwara. In the same way, we get another explanation of hanana mochana vikalpastu rasadinam api ashuddhya shuddhya cha vaktavyaha. Then comes the question of how this kala prakriti dushya dosha tulyohi santatam. So what is the explanation for this kala prakriti and all that? Is kalaha varshadihi dushyaha rasadi prakritihi deha prakriti shleshma prakriti adika. There comes the explanation that kaladi tulyata doshasya kadachideva sambhavati. That it does not happen very often. It occurs very rarely. Yatha vasante. Why is this? Or it is being explained. Why is it so? Why this similarity is not so common? There comes the explanation. There comes the situation of Vasanta Rutu, Shleshma Prakriti Purusha, Medas is the Doshya, and Kapha is the dosha involved. So for all these four to come together, it is quite difficult. The same way in relation to Pitta also. With this explanation is there, then how can Tridosha come together and cause this? That is also quite uncommon. That is also not quite commonly seen. Uchyate, what happens if it happens? Tulya ityabhidhayapi yat nishpratyanikah karoti. It is not treatable. It is quite difficult for treatment. There comes a very interesting story here in the Tika. Let me explain it in very brief. So, how this dosha, doshya, kala, prakriti combination sustains is like they are not very supportive to each other, right? Even though they stay together and cause and be troublesome. This happens very similar to small kings with small areas who are who are under quite a big king who doesn't want to support the big king. They want to no king wants to be under someone else, right? He always wants to be independent and rule his own kingdom, but that doesn't happen if he is a small king and he is getting ruled under a big king. So what he does, he has to support that big king, but in the same way he also hates The same thing happen here in this combination also. It is not very easy for the dosha or the kala, the prakriti, the dushya to stay like this and end up in causing a disease. It is quite difficult for these things to happen. Moving on, the concept of Lina dosha is very beautifully explained here. So, what is this Lina dosha? As I said, avyakta lakshanata, when the dhatu does not become completely shuddha, it is not, there is, the dosha paka is not complete. Even though the signs and symptoms reduce, the Jwara stays in the body like being avyakta. Remember, this is not complete cure. This is durlabha upashama. This stays for dirghamapi anvartate. This stays for long time. So before treating, especially these type of santata and other types of jwara, one has to keep this in mind. And remember, in all these types of jwara, what is the main line of treatment? It is always the apatarpana. Moving on, the next point is the concept of Lina dosha. Jwaro Lino asti eva param lakshanani tasya vyaktani na bhavanti iti darshayati. So what is the important characteristic of Lina dosha avastha or Lina avastha is lakshanani tasya na vyaktani bhavanti. That means to say the lakshana are avyakta, the lakshanas are not seen. So there comes the question, what is this avyakta means? Do we remember where do we get this avyakta commonly? This avyakta we get in avyaktam lakshanam tasya, avyaktam lakshanam tesham purva rupam iti smritam. And also we get this word avyakta in Nidanasthana also. To understand the meaning of this word avyakta, let us go to Nidanasthana, the Jwara Nidana, wherein we find the explanation for this word avyaktata. The explanation for the shloka number 8, the thika, avyaktata cha lakshananam iyameva yat alpatvena asphutatvam. So what does the word avyakta mean? It is alpa lakshana yukta or it is asphuta lakshana yukta. And what is the important one here? It is na darshayati, na bhavanti iti darshayati. As if nothing has happened, but dosha are still there. That is what is the important quality of Lina dosha avastha. When does this start? Tat anu trayodosha dinat arabhya dirghakalam anuvartate. So what is the quality of this Lina dosha? It happens to be, it happens to start on the 13th day and continues for a long time. Remember, we understood this in the shloka. Sargam dvadashe kritva divase avyakta lakshanam. It remains in the body as being avyakta. What is one more quality of Lina dosha? It is durlabha upashama. It is not easy for treatment. It is certainly difficult for treatment. Moving on, we also get explanation of the other textual references which explain about Santata Jwara. There comes one important point, how this Santata Jwara is different from other types of Jwara. It is different from other types of Jwara. Remember the term Kala Dushya Prakriti Dosha Tulyata. Kala Dushya Prakriti Bhihi Dosha Tulyo Hi Santatam. That is what is important quality in terms of Santata Jwara. Along with that, remember there are Dvadashaite Samuddishtaha. There are 12 Ashraya for this. And Saptahadva, Dashahadva, Dashaham va, Dvadashaham va, Saptaham va, Sudussaha. It kills or gets cured on these 3 important days. Moving on to the next type, remember this concept of Lena dosha. It is not very commonly found in different contexts. This is one important context where we find the explanation of Lena dosha in under the explanation of Santata Jwara in Jwara Chikitsa. Moving on, what happens if this Kala, Dosha, Dushya, Prakriti are not Tulya? What happens if all the seven Dhatu, Tridosha, Dvimala are not involved? There comes other types of Panchavidha Jwara, which is the second type of Panchavidha Jwara, which is Satataka Jwara. Raktadhatva Shrayah Prayo Dosha Satatakam Jwaram. Remember, what are the ashraya for Santata? It is all seven dhatu, three dosha, and two mala. But here it is specific to Rakta dhatu. Remember, not all dhatu are involved here. So, does that become Sukha or Kashta Sadhya for Chikitsa? The number of involvement of dosha are lesser, and the number of involvement of dhatu are lesser. There certainly be less number of lakshana. So, when the number of lakshanas are less, it certainly be easy for treatment. So, pratyanikaha. Remember, the Santata Jwara is Nishpratyanikaha kurute tasmad jneyaha sudussaha kala dushya prakritivihi doshatulyo hi santatam nishpratyanikaha kurute. Santata is Nishpratyanika. Whereas due to involvement of less dosha, less dhatu, Satata Jwara is Sapratyanika. There is opposites to this. There is treatment available for this. Why it becomes a pratyanika? Kala vruddhi kshayatmakam. It is because of at particular kala there is vruddhi or kshaya of the dosha. Ahoratre satatako dvau kala vanuvartate. So what happens? What is the main clinical feature of satataka jwara? Ahoratrau dvau kala anuvartate. In 24 hours, rather in a day and night, Satataka Jwara appears twice. So moving on, Prayo Grahanat Satatako Rakta Vyatiriktam Mamsadi Dhatum Api Ashrayata Iti Darshayati. It says the dosha may get localized, dosha may also be located in other dhatu also. Sapratyanika iti kaladishu madhyanyatamaha pratyaniikaha. All these explanation we went through. Next comes dosha anugune kale jwaro bhavati. So what is the significance of kala in terms of jwara here? Dosha anugune kale. If the dosha and kala are similar, if they are together, if they are they go hand in hand, then jwaro bhavati. Jwara will also occur. Whereas dosha anuguna kala vyatirikte cha kale kshayo bhavati. If they do not go hand in hand, if they are not similar, then the kshaya happens. Then the jwara does not actually appear. So next comes the question, why it is said to be not so severe is because kala prakriti dushya here only kala bhavitva niyamo gneha. So among these 4-5 points, they are not tulya here. Kala, dosha, dushya, prakriti, all four are not similar here. Why Satataka Jwara is better compared to Santata Jwara for treatment? Why it is considered Sapratyanayika? It is because of only the similarity between Kala and dosha. Next, I hope it is clear that Satataka Jwara, it does not stay for 7 long days, 10 long days, or 12 long days. It stays. No, it appears twice in a day. It is not as continuous as the other one which we explained right now. Moving on, Kala Prakriti Dushyanam Prapyaiva Anyatamat Balam. Anyone is Balavan here. Only one of the three supports. Anyedyushkam jwaram dosho rudva medovaha siraha. Remember, sira is a synonym of srotas. Sira, srotos, rudva medovaha sira. Sroto dushti is happening in which sira? In medovaha sira. Moving on, I'll tell the explanation. Beautiful Thika is being explained here. Sa pratyaniko. This Anyedyushka Jwara is also Pratyanika Jwara. It is also treatable Jwara. Jaret Ekakalam Maharnishi. What was the quality of Jwara in Santata Jwara? It was continuous. What was the quality of Satataka Jwara? It happens twice in a day. Ahoratre Satatako Dvau Kala Vanuvartate. So what is the quality of Jwara in Anyedyushka Jwara? Sapratyaniko, it is treatable. Ekakalam Maharnishi. We can understand that the intensity, the importance of fever is becoming better. I mean to say, in terms of the clinical features, it is not so badly continuous for 7, 10 or 12 days. It would have come once in or twice in a day. Dosho asthimajjagaha. So what happens when the dosha is raktashrita? What happens in Santata Jwara? It is saptadhatu, tridosha and 2 malar in what? What happens here in Satataka Jwara? It is the Rakta Dhatu Ashrita. What is for Anyedyushka Jwara? It is the Medovahasira. Medovahasira, that is not very much different from the Medo Dhatu itself. I will tell you the explanation. Then comes the point of Dosho Asthimajjagaha Kuryat Trutiyeka Chaturthako. If this dosha gets their place in Asthi, it is Trutiyaka Jwara. If it is in Majja Dhatu, it is Chaturthaka Jwara. So it can be Ekantara Gati, which is being explained. Anyedyushkam Juram Kuryad Api Samsrishtya Shonitam. Now comes the explanation of this. After the 64th shloka comes the explanation of other Acharya that we get in. We get the explanation in Thika that it is being said in other Acharya. Etu Trutiyaka Chaturthakayor Dushya Pratipadakam Grantham Na Pathanti Tesham Tantrantara Pratyaya Dushyavarodha. It is what is there in Tantrantara. It is what is there in other texts. So next comes the point of Anyedyushkaha Pratidinam Dinam Hatva Tritiyakaha. So what is the quality of Anyedyushka? We understood in the previous shloka. Janayet Ekakalam Maharnishi. Pratidinam. It happens in a day. Once in a day. It happens in a day. It happens once in a day. Dinam Hatva Tritiyakaha. So what is the quality of Jwara in Tritiyaka Jwara? It is having a gap of 1 day. And Dinadvayamyo Vishramya Pratyeti Sa Chaturthakaha. What is the quality of Jwara in Chaturthaka Jwara? It happens on the 4th day. Today is day 1, tomorrow day 2, day after day 3, then the next day is day 4. Comes today, it comes on the 4th day. That means there are 2 days gap. So what is the quality of Tritiyaka? Dinam Hatva. If today is day 1, tomorrow is day 2, the day after is day 3. Today fever is there, tomorrow no fever, Dinam Hatva. With a gap of 1 day, Jwara reappears. That is what is Dinam Hatva Tritiyakaha. We will go into the Thika, which is very interesting here. Medovaha ityartha Medovaha Nadi Rodha Deva Medo Dushtihi Gneya. So what you have to understand, Rudva Medovaha Sira, that you should not understand only the srotas of Medo Dhatu is involved. It has to be understood in terms of Medo Dushti itself. If we can go back to the shloka of Vimanasthana, 5th chapter, 9th shloka, Tesam Shrotasam Rodhat. Sthanasthaha chaiva margagascha sharira dhatavah prakopamapadyante. This is a very wonderful shloka. This is one important shloka in Srotas Vimana which tells us about the Srotas involvement in Vyadhi. It says, Sthanasthaha margagascha dhatavaha prakopamapadyante. What happens in terms of Srota Dushti? Both Sthanastha as well as Margaga dhatu gets involved. Becomes what the word we commonly use is the vitiated. Mamsa srotamsi anusrutaha. It is what is being explained in relation to Tritiyaka. Was one more important point here is Atra api sroto dushtya dhatu dushtiravagantavya. That means if you are thinking about sroto dushti, you have to always mean it in terms of dhatu dushti also. Then comes the explanation of Tritiyaka Chaturthaka, how it happens. Tritiya Dina Chaturtha Dina Bhavitvam. That says this occurs on Dinam Hatva is what is being explained in the shloka. Dinam Hatva Tritiyakah Dinadvayam Yo Vishramya Pratyeti Sa Chaturthaka. That is being more simpler here by Chakrapani sir, who says Tritiya Dina Chaturtha Dina. As I said, Tritiyaka Jwara occurs every third day, Chaturthaka Jwara occurs every fourth day. What is the explanation? What is the simile given for this explanation? Is the adhishete yatha bhumim bijam kale charohati adhishete yatha dhatum doshah kale cha kupyati savruddhim balagalam cha prapya doshastritiyakam chaturthakam cha kurute pratyanika balakshayat. There is one more important, rather interesting reference here in terms of Tritiya Chaturthaka Jwara. Let's go back to shloka number 35. The shlokas from 32 to 35 are being explained together. If you come to the last line of this, Tritiya Chaturthakayoho agantu anubandhatvat asadharana dharma yogitam darshayati. So what is being explained here is there is involvement of agantukarana in terms of Tritiyaka and Chaturthaka. There is also further explanation about this, that there is involvement of bhuta anubandho vaktavyaha. If you can read just to the next and right of this, that is the 74th shloka tika, agantuhu anubandho hi prayasho Vishamajwara iti granthena bhutanubandho vaktavyaha. Bhutanubandho, something which is leaving. There is involvement of something which is leaving. Which can we consider them as microorganisms? That is what is bhutanubandha, which we can think of here. So then comes the question, then comes the explanation of this adhijayate yatha bhumi, which says when the seed falls on the ground, it will wait and it will remain something like in a dormant state for a long time. It can wait till it finds the proper kala. The same way, dhatu dosha kale cha kupyati. When the dosha gets attached to dhatu, same thing happens. It will wait for the proper kala. There comes the question, why there is no Jwara, or why there is no clinical features in between the days of Tritiyaka and Chaturthaka. There comes the explanation, Pratyanikasya kala prakrityadi dosha viruddhasya balakshayah tena dosha vruddhya yada pratyanikasya kshayo bhavati tada jvarayati ityartha. This happens because of the influence of dosha and kala. When the dosha and kala are helping to each other, along with pratyanika balakshaya, there comes jwara. When this becomes opposite, when the dosha vruddhi is not so prominent, when the kala is not helpful, and also when there is some better amount of pratyanika bala, then jwara will be lesser. कृत्वा वेगं गतबलाः स्वे स्वे स्थाने व्यवस्थिताः पुनर्विवृद्धाः स्वे काले ज्वरयन्ति नरमलाः. What happens in terms of what happens? What is the fate of dushta dosha? Is once they become dushta, they create these clinical features. They lose their bala. They lose their bala. Svesthane vyavasthita. They what they can be considered as to be back in their own sthana. But again, satatako dosha vegam krutva gatabala bhavanti. They become less balavan, or they become unable to produce the clinical feature. Gatabalascha punaha sve sve raktadau sthane sthita bhavanti. Punaha ta eva vruddhaha sve kale jwarayanti. This is what is the explanation given why there is no jwara in between. Is because they become gata bala, they lose their bala after giving rise to clinical features. Kapha pitta trikagrahi prushthatvata kafatmakaha prushthatvata kafatmakaha. Then comes the explanation of the Tritiyaka Jwara and Chaturthaka Jwara, wherein there is mentioning of 3 types of Tritiyaka and 2 types of Chaturthaka Jwara. If it is Trikagrahi, if it is Kapha and Pitta Pradhana Tritiyaka Jwara, then you can find Trikagrahi Lakshana. If it is Vata and Kapha, then it usually happens as Prushthagrahi. If it is Vata and Pittaja, usually it is Shiragrahi Tritiyaka Jwara. Meaning those are the clinical features, those are the adhisthana which are predominantly found in these cases. Chaturthako darshayati prabhavam dvividham jwaraha. What are the 2 types of Chaturthaka Jwara? It is, remember, Chaturthaka Jwara, there is no involvement of Pitta here. That is what is comes in the next explanation of the Thika. It is Kapha and Vata involvement what causes Chaturthaka Jwara. Janghabhyam Shlaishmikaha Purvam Shirasto Anila Sambhavaha. Shiraha Anila Sambhavaha. So, if you want to say the Chaturthaka Jwara as Kapha Pradhana, then you have to see the Lakshana of Jangha Pida in the beginning. Whereas if you see Shiras Pida, then it goes in favor of a Vata Pradhana Chaturthaka Jwara. Atra cha na swapradhanah paitikaschcha paitikaha chaturthakaha pittagridrasivat bhavati. As or similar to how there is no explanation of pittaja gridrasi, similar to that there is no typical explanation of pittaja chaturthaka jwara. Let me finish in the next 5-10 minutes. Let us finish go a bit forward so that we can finish in the coming shlokas quite soon. These require more explanation, whereas the coming shlokas, they do not require much explanation. Vishama Jwara. The word Vishama Jwara comes now. After the explanation of all 5 different types of Jwara, the Vishama Jwara word is being taken up. There comes the word Chaturthaka Viparyaya. There happens another type of Vishama Jwara, which is Chaturthaka Viparyaya. What is this Chaturthaka Viparyaya? It happens because of the ashraya of Tridosha in Asthi or Majja Dhatu. Trividho Dhaturiti Vatadi. Trividho Dhaturekaiko Dvidhatustha Karotiyam. So what happens here? The dosha Dvidhatustha. Which are this Dvidhatu? It is Asthi or Majja Dhatu. Next comes the question. Next comes the explanation. Prayashaha sannipatena dushtaha panchavidho jwaraha. Why the word prayasha is used? Prayasho grahanat satatakadinam dvandvadi janyatvam api suchayati. Sannipatena dushtaha panchavidho jwaraha prayashaha. Now, why this word maybe is used? Because in the previous points we understood that it is always because of sannipata, involvement of dosha, there will be Vishama Jwara or Panchavidha Jwara. Because even in this Sannipata Avastha, there can be one dosha dominance, or even in these types of Jwara, it is not always all the three dosha which are involved. It can be two dosha involvement also. So it is called as prayashaha. It is called as maybe always there is Sannipata Avastha of dosha in Panchavidha Jwara. Why? Because is this there can be one dosha dominant among the three, or it can be only two dosha which have come together to end up in causing a Vishama Jwara. Especially remember, this does not happen in terms of Santata Jwara. This happens only in relation to Satataka Jwara and the following ones. This shloka is also quite interesting. This explanation of Tika is also quite interesting. As I said in the previous one, there is consideration of the word Bhuta Anubandha here. There comes Vishamajwara. Vishamajwaraha Tridoshajatve api Adhika dosha labdhakyaha. That means it may, even though it is always considered as Tridoshaja, there might be one dosha which is more dominant of the other two. Vishamatvam. Here comes the favorite explanation of Vishamajwara. Vishamatvam Vishamakaalatvena bhavati. Vishamo Vishamarambha Kriyakala Anushangavaన్. This is basically from the Vagbhata sir's explanation from second chapter, Nidanasthana. Vishamo Vishamarambha. Vishama Arambha. What does the word Vishama Arambha mean? It is irregularity in its beginning. Vishama Kala. There is Vishamata, there is irregularity in the time of manifestation. Along with it is Anushangi. It has chronicity. It is long. It survives for, I mean, it stays for a long time. Moving on, it is explanation which is important here is, the explanation which is important here is, we always remember 7, 10 and 12 days. But here it says, Visargena santatetu dvadashaha visargena trayodashahe punaha anubandhat kala vaishamyam asti. Remember, even though it may completely get released on 12th day, it can come back on 13th day. And there is another explanation of, there is an opinion that, see, why you have to call it as Vishamajvara? Anything to be called as Vishamajvara, there has to be Vishamata in its Vega, Vishamata in its qualities. But what happens in case of Santata Jwara? There is no Vishamata. There is continuous Jwara for 7, 10 or 12 days. Then why you have to consider it as Vishamajvara? There comes the explanation that even though it is considered continuous, it can come back, it can completely be cured off on 12th day, as we also saw this explanation in the previous shloka also, where we understood it in terms of Lena dosha. It can come back on the 13th day. So it is supposed to be considered as Vishamajvara. And others say Santata is not a type of Vishamajvara. Only the other four are to be considered as Vishamajvara. Then comes the explanation of, this is one more important explanation of the Srotas here, as explained by Acharya Daruvaha. Sukshma Taraha Tarasyeshu Tarahayeshu Dura Tareshu cha Dosho Raktadi Margeshu Shanaihi Alpam Chirenayat, and etc. This is what we can understand the explanation of Srotas, the morphological features of Srotas, along with what is being explained in the Srota Vimana chapter. What happens here? They are Sukshma, they are Dura Tareshu cha. They are spread to different parts of the body which are quite far from their origin also. So what happens here is, there is movement of the dosha, and also there is movement of dhatu also. So what happens here, why Jwara happens in these cases, is when these dushta dosha reach the particular dhatu, and end up in causing a disease. This is what I have said many a time, saying that is the value for opinion given by different acharya here. Moving on, Rutu ahoratra doshanam manasascha balabalat kalam arthavashachaiva jwarastam tam prapadyate. Prapadyate jwaraha. What makes the jwara to start? Number one, bala or abala of Rutu and Kala. Other, I think ahoratri Kala. Rutu ahoratri. Then what is the important next point for Jwara to start? It is the Sharirika dosha bala or Sharirika dosha abala. It can be Manasascha. It can be the Manasika dosha bala or abala. Or the fourth term which causes Jwara is Arthavashat. Kalam Arthavashat Chaiva. It is what is can be considered in terms of Purva Janma Karma, Paschat Janma or Purva Janma Karma. This Tika is quite interesting in terms of its explanation here. How this Varsha Rutu influences this particular Vishamajwara. It's very, very beautifully explained here. तत्र ऋतु बलात् वातोत्तरः सततको वर्षाकालजः प्रत्यनीकं शरदं प्राप्य अन्येद्युष्कादिरूपो भवति. That jwara wherein there is vata pradhanata, if it is happening in varsha jwara, may have the qualities of satata jwara. Vata, varsha go hand in hand, so the prabhava of jwara is higher. Whereas if the same thing happens in Sharad Rutu, is Sharad congenial? Is Sharad helpful for Vata? It is certainly not helpful. So what happens in case of Sharad Rutu? There is Pratyanikata. There is something which is opposite is there. The Sharad Rutu does not leave Vata to become more Vruddha. So what happens? The bala of dosha, the bala of the vyadhi comes down. It is supposed to be satataka, now has become behaving like Anyedyushka. The same way, on the other hand, it is also explained. Vata Pradhana Chaturthaka Jwara during Vasanta Rutu, which is behaving like a Chaturthaka Jwara, Vata Pradhana Jwara, may become to be behaving like a Trutiyaka Jwara also. Why? It is because of Ruksha Ahara Sevana. You can see that. Rukshani prapya balavan trutiyakadi rupo bhavati, which is supposed to be vatikah chaturthako jato yahasa vasantasya rukshani prapya. The same thing because of the influence of ruksha ahara vihara. See, now it was chaturthaka, it has gained more bala and has now become tritiyaka. This can also happen. Moving on, this is very beautiful explanation of the influence of Kala on particular disease. The same way, Kafaja Satataka Jwara can become Anyedyushka when there is the presence of Viparita Guna or Viparita Kala or the Rutu in terms of. Then comes the importance of Manobala. Mano निवृत्त्यादिना अन्येद्युष्कादिज्वरवान् भवति मनो दौर्बल्यात् भयादिना चतुर्थकादिज्वरि तृतीयकादिज्वरवान् भवति. See how beautiful the explanation is here on the importance of manas. If the manas is balavan, then even the satataka jwara becomes anyadyushka jwara, which is supposed to be of twice in a day becomes once in a day. The same way, if there is bhaya, if there is manodorbalya, even the chaturthaka jwara may become tritiyaka jwara. This is what is the importance of influence of different factors on jwara. After this explanation comes the explanation of dhatugata avastha of jwara, which is followed by dvandva jwara. I mean the influence of samsarga of dosha leading to Jwara. And sorry, to end with the previous one, there were factors as I explained. There's one more point called artha. So what does this artha mean? Artha vashat iti karma vashat. It is the paschat karma, purva janma karma. If the person has done shubha karma in purva janma, then even a dukkha kara jwara becomes sukha. Yaha sukha sa bhavati. Papa karmana tu dukkha jwaro bhavati iti gneyam. If the person has done papa karma in terms of artha, in terms of karma, then even the sukha jwara, which is supposed to be, may behave like a dukkha jwara. Moving on to the next one, the shloka number 84. Hetubhi lakshanaihi cha uktaha purvam ashtavidho jwaraha. Purvam in nidana sthana. All the hetu lakshana, everything is explained in relation to ashtavidha jwara. Samasena. So how it was explained there? It was samasena. It was in short. Now, vyasatah shrunu lakshanam. It is being explained in detail here. Ekadoshaja are not explained here. What is being explained here is the dvidoshaja jwara, which is quite easily understandable. Moving on to the next point is sannipataja uchyate. Sannipata jwarasyordhvam trayodasha vidhasya hi. प्राक्सूत्री तस्य वक्ष्यामि लक्षणं वै पृथक् पृथक्. Only the name 13 is mentioned, only the types 13, I mean the word 13 is mentioned previous chapters, whereas the lakshana are being explained here. Let me go on to the let me end this with this today with this. There is this important explanation of prakriti samasamavaya and vikriti vishama samavaya here. So what is this prakriti samasamavaya? When you expect a lakshana by the combination, the expected lakshana result out, then it is called prakriti samasamavaya. If the expected results are not found out by a combination, then it is called vikriti vishama samavaya. Remember, among the 13 types of sannipata jwara, what is found among these two? It is all the first 12 come under the concept of prakriti samasamavaya, wherein by the combination, what you expect comes out. Samyoga, the effect of this samyoga is as you expect. Whereas samasannipata, the 13th type of the 13th type of sannipata jwara goes in favor of the other type of explanation, which is vikriti vishama samavaya. Remember this reference of prakriti samasamavaya and vikriti vishama samavaya here. There is another explanation. There is one more important, a similar explanation which I want to quote here is between the Muhurdaha Muhushita of the previous explanation of shloka number 88 in Shleshma Pitta Jwara, and there's a quite a similar one is Akshane Daha Kshane Shitaha, which is the first line of, which is the second line of shloka number 103. But in terms of Samasannipata Jwara, that's the one. There is one more important quote here. I mean, the term here which is not often found is krushatvam nati gatranam. That is gatranam na ati krushatvam. The person may lose weight only a bit. That means the person does not lose much of his weight. Why the person does not lose weight in Sannipata Jwara? It is because of the dosha puranatva in the sharira. Krishatvam nati gatranam dosha purnatvena, because the dosha involvement, the dosha prakopa is so much that it is adding the weight to the person. Next comes the explanation of the kotha. Varati dashta sankashaha. It is what is being explained in Bhalukiya Tantra. Varati dashta sankashaha, and all that we know the explanation. What is important clinical feature of kota is, remember this, kshanika utpada vinashaha. It does not stay for a long time. It comes and goes off very soon. It appears and disappears quite frequently. That is what is one important clinical feature of kota. The next comes the asadhya sannipata jwara lakshana doshe vibadhe Here the term dosha can be understood even in terms of the mala. Nashte agno. The Agni is Nashta. Yeah, the Thika for this explanation of Nashte Agni is very interesting again. Nashte Agna Viti Itara Jwara Pekshaya Adhikataya Nashte. That means to say, in relation to other Jwara, the Agni Dushti or the Agni Nashtata, which is happening in terms of Sannipata Jwara, will be much higher. If it is maximum, then it is supposed to be called as Asadhya Sannipata Jwara. So what do you call it as asadhya? What are the qualities? One is doshe vibadhe, nashte agnau, sarva sampurna lakshana yukta. All these, when present, then it is called as asadhya sannipata jwara. And if we can remember the Agre Prakarana, the 25th chapter, if you go to that point of 40th shloka, the last one in that page is Sannipado Dushchikitsanam. Remember, Sannipada Dosha Dushti is very difficult for treatment. The same thing is being explained in Bhalukya Tantra, which says the person with Sannipata Mrityuna Saha Yodhavyam. He has to fight with death to survive in cases of Sannipata Jwara. I think it's the time we shall end for the day. Dr. Ashita, is that fine?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. We'll continue tomorrow, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.